Welcome to Forthright. I'm Sulani Madsen, and bringing you a podcast today with last week's column. It was inspired by one woman's irritation with double standards displayed by the Spokane City Council in a letter she read at Open Forum. And as an extra feature, I'm going to read some feedback from readers. First published March 7, 2024 in the Spokesman Review, headlined, Spokane City Council's Attitude Adjustment. 2 years ago, the progressive majority on the Spokane City Council was busy writing letters to the conservative mayor. This year, the council seems to have lost their pen. On January 11, 2022, the council felt it was critically important to remind the mayor that the Spokane City Council had enacted several ordinance provisions to serve the houseless in the current frigid temperatures, and those ordinances need to be followed. The same day, a guest opinion column in the Spokesman Review by housing and homelessness activists Dawn Schuster and Jennifer Calvert, titled, The City Should Immediately Provide Shelter for Homeless, reinforced the council's message to the mayor, saying, and I quote, the city's action violated Spokane Municipal Code 1805030, Section B3, stating that, at no time shall the city reduce or eliminate specific night-by-night shelter beds without first having in place additional replacement shelter bed capacity sufficient to meet the requirements of SMC 1805 unless authorized by City Council resolution, end quote. On Monday night, former City Council candidate Earl Moore, a friend of former Mayor Nadine Woodward, reminded the council of those same ordinances in her testimony during the open forum portion of the council meeting. Again, I quote, Mayor Brown reduced 100 beds at TRAC, the Trent Resource and Assistance Center, and closed the Cannon Shelter on Friday. Where's the outrage today? The former administration would never have gotten away with anything like that for the homeless in the middle of winter. The media would be all over this and people would be protesting. I'd like to remind you this decision is a violation of 2 City Council ordinances. Spokane Municipal Code, Section 1805020, directs the city to open inclement weather centers beyond existing homeless shelter capacity for each day the National Weather Service predicts temperatures of 32 degrees or lower. The city has violated this ordinance for the past 3 days. Tonight will make it the 4th. Spokane Municipal Code, Section 1805030, directs the city to open and at no time shall the city reduce or eliminate night-by-night shelter beds unless authorized by City Council resolution. Did you pass a resolution to close Cannon last week? City Council President Betsy Wilkerson, a friend of Mayor Lisa Brown, gently responded to Moore, saying, I will share a point of information. Beds were expanded at the church shelter outreach, so there was no decrease in overnight beds. But that's not what the city says on its website. The city's contract with Jules Helping Hands was extended to continue maintaining shelter services at local churches, which accounts for 80 total beds, but capacity was not expanded. And overnight bed capacity was apparently decreased recently when one church shelter was closed on March 2nd. According to a post on Jules Helping Hands' Facebook page, last night we closed the Liberty Park United Methodist Church Warming Center. We are happy to say we had no displaced individuals. And it's great news no one was displaced, but no mention was made of replacing those beds elsewhere. Pinning down capacity has been an issue for years, and the City of Spokane website says the Community Housing and Human Services Department is launching a complete shelter audit this month to figure out what Spokane's existing homeless shelter capacity actually is and what it should be, both between and during emergencies. When asked how the timeline for closure of the Cannon Street shelter and the downsizing of the capacity at Track shelter was determined, given the requirements of the ordinance and the weather forecast, City spokeswoman Erin Hutt responded by email with this statement. The timeline to close or ramp down the surge capacity among our shelter system was decided early on. Historically, the city has ended warming shelter capacity toward the end of February. Should we see the return of bitter cold temperatures, we still have the capacity to surge at Track if needed. Now, Moore's point wasn't whether Mayor Brown and her staff made the correct decisions in reducing homeless shelter capacity at the end of February. Look at the outrage they had last year, Moore said. What was a problem last year is okay this year. It's all political. The text of Moore's testimony was sent to Wilkerson and to Council Member Michael Cathcart for comment by email with no response. The bitter cold temperatures, as defined by council ordinance, returned Saturday. This week, the forecast calls for lows below 32 degrees through Saturday. Aaron Hutt confirmed the mayor has decided surging at track isn't needed. Moore isn't interested in excuses from a council she sees as talking out of both sides of their mouth. Quote, "If you're going to hold the previous administration accountable to follow ordinances, why aren't you doing it now?" End quote. The timing on that, since I'm reading this on a Monday, the Monday after the council meeting when the testimony occurred. The point is there was a 9-day period where the temperatures were, and the forecast was that the temperatures would be below freezing, and that triggered that ordinance, and that triggered the reaction of from Earl. In the interest of full disclosure, Earl is a friend of mine from a prayer group that meets regularly on Zoom, and we meet on in person as well. She is one of the kindest, gentlest women I know, so when she gets irritated, it's worth taking notice. She had gone back and looked at some of the coverage and comments in 2022 and 2023 when it was Mayor Woodward making the judgment calls, and the difference was so obvious that Earl just said she had to say something. As a political columnist who believes representative government means people have to participate, I had to say something too. This is the kind of double standard that turns people off government, and they're all crooks becomes the excuse. Why should I bother? And so it felt good Thursday morning when the column hit the print edition, and the first 2 emails with reader feedback were from retired journalists with variations on this. Keep holding them accountable. One said, cue the hyperventilation and hate mail from the usual suspects who froth at the mouth when publicly called to account for their hypocrisy. And then a little on the even more sarcastic side, as Lars Larson loves to say, if it weren't for double standards, liberals would have no standards at all. And what happened to the words of wisdom written by Sean Vestal? Did his pen break or did someone break it? I never did have any feedback from any council members. I haven't had any occasion to bump into any of them in person. Jonathan Bingle is excused. I did talk to him last Saturday, but he was visiting the border in Nogales, Arizona, and meeting with folks there on Thursday and Friday. You can find the piece I wrote with that interview on the Center Square. I'm doing a little reporting, straight reporting, not columnist work for them. I'll put a link to that as well as this column on the Substack post. Be sure to subscribe at Substack with or without a pledge for notifications of new content via email, and take advantage of the opportunity to comment. Thanks for listening.